Richard, middle name Corvello Machado.
Were you named after anyone, Richard?
No, although middle name Corvello is given generally for my mother's maiden name. That was kind of the naming schema then. You always took on your maiden name. So with all my siblings, we're all Corvellos for middle names. Later, when you do your baptism, you get an additional saint's name, but birth name is that.
When were you born?
Born January the 28th of 1947.
And where were you born?
Born on the beautiful island of Flores, Azores, in the village of Fajanzinho.
When did your family immigrate to the United States?
We came in about 1949. We entered the U.S. in January, in fact, January the 22nd of 1949. We came from Flores to the island of Santa Maria, and then from there, we went there by boat. From there, we flew to Nova Scotia, spent a night in Nova Scotia, and then by plane to New York, and a night in New York, and then by train from New York to California. My mother and 7 children, so myself and my 6 siblings. My twin sister and I were only 23 months old at the time. My oldest brother was 16. So there was a 15-year difference between our families. My parents had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, and then a big gap and a set of twins. So so my older brothers and sisters tended to be a lot like second fathers and mothers took good care of us.
So did your mother and you and your siblings meet your father over here?
Yeah, my father was already here. So my father had come, actually have a pretty long history of an association. My grandfather, actually my father's father, received his American citizenship papers in Shasta County, California, in the city of Redding in 1883. And I have those original documents. Didn't bring them with me today, but I have those original documents. And he did what a lot of some early Azorians did, was to come here, earn money, and with the intent of going back, buying more property, making a better life in the Azores. Many of them stayed, some did go back. In my grandfather's case, he went back. And when my father was born there, and because my grandfather had been a naturalized American citizen, my father became a naturalized, not naturalized, but natural-born American citizen. And so my grandfather wanted to return back to the U.S. He was there, went back, says, now I think things are better. So he came back to the U.S., but my grandmother did not want to come. She did not want to leave her family and to the unknown. So my grandfather came back by himself, made a life by himself, and my father stayed as a young boy with his mother until he became of age. And around age 23, my father decided to come to the U.S., and he came with some friends of his whose fathers had done the same thing, had come and they had citizenship. So he had no problem. He had an American passport. Came over, and he was single at the time, although he knew my mother. He went back and forth, worked here for a while in the Bay Area, and went back, married my mother, and then the first family of 5 children were born. And after the birth of that, the last of the 5, which was my brother Tony, in late 1939, my dad decides to come back to the U.S. again, leaving my mother and the siblings there to come earn money to do what his father originally was going to do, which was to come back, buy more land. Now you got 5 children, you need more land to create a better life and to feed them, basically. And so he came here and was here all during the war years, and then returned. And that's when my my twin sister and I were born. He was gone almost 5 years. So I said he had a lot of romance for Mom when he got back. So he got a set of twins out of the deal. And so, but I think he soon found that having been here, that now we have 7 children. I think, I'm an American citizen. I see what's going on in the U.S. Life is still pretty hard in the Azores at that time. So it was time to bring everybody here. Plus, my father had an older sister already living here in Fresno County. I really think that if it had been my father and maybe only 2 children, maybe if he hadn't had so many children, he would have gone back to the Bay Area. He liked the Bay Area. And there are a lot of Portuguese around the Bay Area, San Leandro, other areas, San Jose, have a lot of Portuguese immigrants from the Azores that were there. But he wanted to be close to family, so he had his sister and some other family members here. And so we were kind of in a rural area, of the Azores, and everything was agriculturally based. So the valley was agriculture, was just kind of a natural tie-in. So we came here.
So when you and your mother and your siblings came over to join your father, you settled in Fresno County?
Yeah, settled in Fresno County initially. We made a couple of moves. We were there on a dairy, I think, in Hanford for a while, but initially settled in Fresno County. My dad bought a little ranch, and then at the time there were the 5 of us, or the 7 of us, the children, and so we settled in there and in the eastern area of Fresno, and pretty much remained. My sister, twin sister, still lives in the house that we first moved into when we were there. It's been remodeled and updated, of course, but she still lives on that property.
So then, was your family then an agriculture family in terms of, you mentioned the ranch?
Yeah, we yes and no. Well, my dad was not a full-time farmer, more of a part-time farmer. He never really liked agriculture a lot, but my brothers and myself all had, an affinity for the land. And my dad actually, because in his early days in the Bay Area, he had worked on the ferries, before the Golden Gate Bridge and before the Bay Bridge. The ferries were the only methods of transportation from the East Bay to San Francisco, and so worked in the ferries and around and around some steel mills. And then later, on his second trip during the war, he was here during World War II. He worked in Richmond on the Liberty ships and became a certified welder, and so that was work that he'd had. And so when we brought the family, he went to work for a company here called Kyle and Company. It was a steel company. Later became Pittsburgh Des Moines Steel, but he worked as a certified welder there, and then he had the small ranch, where we grew up on. But my older brother Fred, who went into the Navy for 4 years, when he returned, he started farming and grew really a piece of rental property into a major farm operation. It was one of the great farmers of Fresno County.
You mentioned how your brothers and you had an affinity for the land.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit how that worked?
Well, I think if growing up, growing up on a farm of any size, when you see things that grow, put a seed in the ground and something comes up, and you can benefit from that crop or commodity, whether it's simply a backyard garden with vegetables, which we had. I think we had virtually everything in a backyard garden. Although I didn't start, my affinity for agriculture was from an early age. I know I wanted to be a farmer. When you go to you're in the 8th grade, they ask you what do you want to be. I want to be a farmer. And my mother would say, no, you don't want to be a farmer. It's too hard work. And then as we progressed and went on to college, my brothers were discouraging me from farming. It was still back in the 60s, late 60s, and farming was coming about, but it was still a little hard work. And their advice was go in where you can work in an office in an air-conditioned facility. You don't have to be out here on this hot, dry, hot farming operation. But and so to some degree I took their advice, but it's one of those things about you can't ever take the boy off the farm. So my affinity for agriculture came back. It came almost full circle. Where now, I do a lot, and my whole life is based on agriculture. And so I like the symbol that my job depends on ag, and so agriculture is still a big part of my life.
But tell me a little bit, you came to this country, you weren't even 2 years old yet. So do you have any memory at all of what your life was like?
No, the life there did not, other than, countless stories. And growing up, I mean, we were in a household where we spoke Portuguese every day at home. I attended Madison Elementary as a kindergartner with my sister. We didn't speak one word of English till we went to school, and there were no special programs, total immersion, and which I think today is still the best way to do that. There's too many crutches, I think, that are being provided today, and people do not immerse as quickly. But and there was always, as there have been, always helpful, friendly people, neighbors. I can recall my parents, going to a parent-teacher conference, right? Well, my dad spoke pretty good English, but broken. And those early days, my mother, did not. But there was someone that went with them, and we got it all done. And so, there was ways to work through all of those things. So those were things that I remember. But growing up, I think we had a very loving family, and we had a lot of relatives. There was always Sunday visits, and there were those visits where, you didn't call someone and ask them if they're home, just drove there. If they were there, fine. If not, you went on to the next house, And if you did show up there, there was always something to eat, drink, and stories. So, and my parents visited a lot of their friends from the Azores that were, in different parts of the community. And because my older brothers and sisters were almost on their way developing their own lives, it was my twin sister and I who went with mom and dad, and then we had to sit there in many places and just for hours and listen to people telling stories of the old country. Some of my best recollections now, even as a teenager, was sitting at the Portuguese festivals underneath a shade tree, and my dad talking with his friends, about things that they missed, the old countries. And I'll never forget my dad's recollection of missing a thing called lapis. Anybody who's watching this and has been to the Azores knows lapis. They're lipids. They're kind of indigenous to the Azores, but they are a seed version that attaches to the rock. They're small, and they're generally grilled with garlic and olive oil, and just wonderful to eat. And you can't find them, I think, anywhere else or you can't find them in the quality you find them in the Azores. They'd always talk about missing eating those. Well, we didn't have them here, and I never had a chance to eat those. Until such time as I made my first return trip to the Azores, and that's the first thing that I wanted to eat, and it was really good.
Well, you're talking about the lapis. Were there any other things that you recall, especially your mother? What was it like adjusting to life in the United States for her?
Well, for her, it was more challenging. She didn't speak English, and she was not an American citizen, unlike my father, who was a natural born, because my grandfather had become naturalized. And so it made all of the children same way. We had that natural U.S. citizenship. But my mother had to actually go through citizenship classes and become an American citizen. And she was a very bright woman. She worked hard, she studied, and she did really well, and we were really proud of her when she got her citizenships.
So you mentioned growing up speaking Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
What other traditions did you maintain from the Azores growing up?
Well, I think sometimes with the simplicity of food, it's hard to believe that in my lifetime, although because I was as young as I was, I don't recall it directly, but countless witnesses and stories from my siblings and my parents. When we left our island of Florida, there was no electricity at all on the island. there was no running water in any house. There were no roads, no cars. My brothers and sisters grew up reading and learning to read by an oil lamp, and this is in my lifetime. And so life was very difficult and challenging, and it was almost a subsistence life. You worked very hard just basically to survive. And so when opportunities came, like to come to the U.S., we did that. So that was one of the changes. But the maintaining traditions were that because everything was so simple, the garden in the back where you ate, because there weren't grocery stores to go buy things. You slaughter an animal once a year and you render it the fat. And you keep the meat that you could, or maybe a fresh chicken every once in a while. But out of the gardens were the vegetables. And so one of the first things we always had from day one when we arrived here, we had great gardens. And my mother used to make a soup that I love, and it's one of the national dishes of Portugal in the Azores, is caldo verde. Green soup, and that was made from any variety of green, from turnip greens to mustard greens to watercress, to whatever the green that was available. So that was something that I recall, and just the simplicity of it, and I love it today. I just had it 2 weeks ago in the Azores. So,
what new traditions did your family adopt when they got here?
Well, I think, of course, new traditions were Americans. I know a lot of people refer themselves as Portuguese Americans. I like to reverse the thing. I'm an American of Portuguese descent. I mean, I live in the US of A. I'm an American citizen. I'm proud of it. It's the greatest country that God ever created. And even though there's wonderful things about Portugal, I love it dearly. I always like to refer as an American of Portuguese descent. But we ended up adopting, of course, the traditional things, the 4th of July, the Thanksgiving, Christmas, and those religious holidays were all part of the Portuguese culture as well. But those kinds of traditions were things that we embraced. We started, of course, as I got into school, and we played football and baseball. Those were things that weren't done there, and my parents came to watch me play. My sister as well. We participated in some of those things. So those are kind of, I would think, the things that they brought about. Always with, the Portuguese heritage always going, in a parallel track.
Do you have children of your own?
I do. I have three daughters, and their mother is 100% Italian. So my daughters are half Italian and half Portuguese, which can be a pretty good combination.
So with your three daughters, how important is it to you that they maintain some sense of Portuguese identity?
Oh, it's very important, and they all are. They have all bought into that totally. In fact, my oldest daughter Gina and her husband Matt live in Visalia, and I have two granddaughters, Chloe and Alexis. And they both have been, in the last 2 years, down in Tulare taking Portuguese classes and learning Portuguese. And although Matt, my son-in-law, is not an ounce of Portuguese in him, but the traditions had always been strong with the girls, going to the festivals and being around our family all the time. And my mother, we have an annual Machado linguiça party that we made. I think last year we made about 1,200 pounds of linguiça with 150 people, and it turns into a big feast day. But they've been doing that since they were young children. When my mother was still alive, they would help my mother mix the ingredients for the linguiça, the spices, and she never had a recipe. It was always by smell. She put in, she knew exactly what was right. And so they were around, and they do that, and they've all been to the Azores, all of them. My daughter Lisa, who's a teacher, a school teacher, went with us last year. She's single but teaches, loves it. She went last year again with us, and next year all of the girls are going along with our grandchildren. So we expect to have a wonderful family vacation in the Azores, which I go to. I've been going since that first initial trip. about 25 years ago when I first savored the Lapish, I'll never forget that, to just about every year going there. And in the last 4 consecutive years, I've gone twice, and this year I'll be going twice. I just returned in June, and I'll be going back in August again.
So do you still have family there?
I have a lot of family. My mother had 3 sisters who never left the islands, so their children basically all stayed there. So I have a lot of first cousins. I'm in contact with them all the time, and today it's amazing when I mentioned that there was no electricity, there was no running water in the houses, no cars, no roads. When I left there, I can go back there today and sit in my village of Fuzhenzinga in my cousin's little grocery store, and I have a faster internet connection than I do here. So we're texting all the time. I get we get Messenger where we're talking visually. So it's a pretty dramatic change in what's happened in the Azores. Yeah.
So it sounds like, if I may say, that you not only have a family connection to your island, but a soul connection.
Absolutely.
And is it important to you, because it sounds like your daughters have inherited that you've raised them with that?
Yes.
Why is that important to you that they carry on that tradition, which sounds like it's going to be cultivated in your grandchildren?
Yeah. I think it's a sense. I mean, obviously, I have an Italian side as well, and my wife and I visited Italy several times. We were there last year for our 45th wedding anniversary, and so they have their Italian side as well. And then this year, next coming year, when we visit the Azores and Portugal, they're all going to go on to Italy as well. So they're going to taste a little bit of the mother side. But I think having some rich connection, to culture and some of the traditions, and of course those traditions are, the importance of family and friends, the culinary, things of the wonderful foods of both Italy and Portugal. And Portugal's had a wonderful. I watched a program last night, Alan Zimmer on Portugal and some of the great foods, there's a lot of the similarities between mainland Portugal and the Azores and stuff, but there's some things indigenous to the Azores. They have a lot of cookbooks, that have Portuguese recipes that come both from the mainland Portugal and from the Azores. And caldo verde is among the best of it. Still one of my favorite things.
So let's talk a little bit about what brought you to what you're doing now professionally.
Yeah.
You say that agriculture, being with the land, has always kind of been in you. Where did you go to college and what did you major in?
Well, I in the days of the '60s when we went there, not a lot of people went off to college. Not to college, but didn't go away to college a lot. And I'm a Fresno boy, and so Fresno State was my right direction. And so I went there. I majored I had a minor in mathematics and then a major in economics and in ag economics, and I just thought that was a good overall. You're never quite sure when you go to college these days. I think today, if I were giving young person advice, I'd tell them to go off and to the military for a couple of years, get a sense of what he wants, come back, and then you kind of know who knows what they want to be when you're 18, right? But with that direction, and I mentioned the coaching from my brothers that you don't want to be on these hot farm summers, working on a ranch and doing that. There's better ways to make a living, go off and work in an office. So I did. I was recruited right out of college into the insurance field, and spent a few years there. But my heart was never really in that. It was always. But the other thing that I had a great affinity for was politics. And so I had the good fortune of being able to serve a couple of governors of California. And so I served in the Wilson administration for over 8 years as director of the California Trade and Commerce Agency, and got to travel a lot around the world and traveled to Portugal several times representing California. So it was a wonderful experience for me. And so it was after that experience that the emerging of these technology was really exploding. Really had kind of the vision the 21st century was going to be an information-based economy, and so that became, I think, a foresight on what directions were possible, and then coming back and trying to tie that to agriculture, which was still in a very paper mode in terms of doing everything that it did. And you compound that then with governmental regulations that required lots of documentation. It was cumbersome, it was repetitive, and we just knew that there was a better way. And so with the help of a good partner, we formed and founded our company basically to make agriculture, or to give agriculture a better method for complying with a lot of the regulations that later expanded into things like food safety and others. And so our little company that grew from a very humble start in a basement basically to a very nice international enterprise right now with about 160 employees.
Congratulations. How'd you come up with the name?
It's funny, it was not our name originally. We formed our company under doing what we were doing. We were doing electronic reporting services. So ERS was kind of our company. That's we just kind of call it as it is. And we branded our product as ChemFile. And so we initially were doing regulatory chemical filing applications. The state of California required that. And so, but it didn't take long. We're dealing with some top people in ag and in the food area. They said, no, I don't think you want chemical. No one wants to hear about chemicals, you better find. So we actually found a marketing person and looking for something with the word ag in it. And Agrian was just a registered website that nobody was using. So we found it. We liked the name. It was catchy. My partner is Armenian. I like to sometimes think that he thought that maybe the Agrian was more of an Armenian name, but it was just a web. So that changed our name and changed our whole focus.
So what are you most proud of in terms of what you've accomplished professionally?
Well, I think I liked my years in public service. I think it was something. I think we helped a lot of communities in California. Part of my job description there was surrounded a lot around agriculture. And again, it was the linchpin to the enterprise we have today. But we started that with the idea that. I was recruiting companies to do value-added agricultural processing in the valley, whether it was one end of the state to the other. So that meant when you had tomatoes that you grew, that those tomatoes did not leave California unless you did everything you could to them. You put them in a can, in a bag, and you cooked them and you made sauce, and you didn't ship them off somewhere else. It was helping to vertically integrate California agriculture into the food processing, and that was kind of a forerunner of watching and seeing a need for data, and that led to that. So that was a very important time in my life. I think it gave me not only the relationships and the connections, but it gave me the knowledge, I think, to look at what opportunities were coming. That's that term that we pull out of the 21st century, really being an information, knowledge-based economy, came from those days and that vision.
So I only have a couple more questions.
Sure.
And they're kind of identity questions,
Okay.
so to speak. And they aren't things that we often think about, but then when we do, we're kind of amazed by what we discover about ourselves. To what extent do you believe that being an American of Portuguese descent has shaped the way that you've moved through the world, Richard, both professionally as well as personally?
I think part of it. I think there's a couple of things, but one I think was, and I attribute a lot of this, of course, to my parents, my mother in particular, but even to my siblings, who gave me a great sense of self-confidence. I think always encouragement and promotion that you can do things. And so I got engaged from the time I was in grammar school into everything I could do to high school and to college and politics. I mean, that was, I think that was part of that family culture, Portuguese family culture, encouraging. My mother and my father were both big believers in education, and even though we came from a very small rural village in Fajanzinho Flores, they had wonderful schools, great books. My mother was just an expert on writing and wrote beautifully and could read everything. My one regret was that I read Portuguese now, but it's challenging. But I get several newspapers. I listen to the Portuguese station RTP, always trying to perfect my language skills. We're not practicing every day. It's a challenge. I know that spending just by the time I spend 2 weeks there, the old country, I'm on my way. I just wish I could spend more time. But so that kind of shaped the thing for knowledge and the encouragement, and I think it just guided me. And then the sense of hard work. I mean, work was always something that you needed to do, and responsibility, honesty, and I think you incorporate that last one was faith that you get. That your faith comes to you, but I mean, it starts with the family introducing it. My mother was very religious. I went to church many times, or my ears were turned, or if I made too much noise, or I got poked. It just helps build all of your personality and character.
So last question, what does being an American of Portuguese descent mean to you?
It means that I have a clear identity to history, a direct path to where ancestry came from. I mean, people today, I think, long for that. You see the growth of these DNA tests. You see Ancestry, 23andMe, all of these. There is a longing, I think, for people to have an understanding of who I am and where did I come from and how were I formed. What are the things that make that up for me? I think I'm fortunate in that I have that clear lineage back to my grandfather and great-grandfather's days, exactly where I was at, and many of them were in that very same village, in that very same island in the Azores. So you were tied there for hundreds and hundreds of years, and I'm a participant in both that Ancestry and 23andMe, and I'm surprised to see some of these linkages that go back even further, but they're directly tied to that. So it means to me, I think, that the spirit. I'm a traveler. I love to travel. I like to think that a lot of my traveling around the world, I've been to a lot of places, and always eager to go at the drop of a hat, is part of that spirit of the Portuguese during the years of the discoveries, when they got on ships when everyone thought that the end of the earth was flat. It took courageous people to get on a ship to go out there to prove that it wasn't flat, right? You had to keep going. And so I hope that that part of what I have as an American of Portuguese descent is that I got that spirit that the Portuguese were well known for in the great days of the discoveries running in my blood.
Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that I didn't ask that?
No, I think it was...